Look at the changing role of public sector. The Indian economy is in a state of transition because the Indian economy is not now, it is not like how it was before. It has been changing. The 5-year plans, then the new economic policies like the liberalization, privatization, globalization have changed the public sector. So it has changed a lot from how it was before. So what all new developments have taken place? We can look into that. The first one is the development of infrastructure. That is, development of infrastructure is a prerequisite for industrialization in any country. So in the pre-independence period, basic infrastructure was not developed, and industrialization progressed at a very slow pace. Infrastructure means building of roads, railways, then water transport systems. Such infrastructure facilities were not progressed in the pre-independence, before the independence. So also they found the need to importance of developing such infrastructure for the industrialization. So they progressed. So there was a development in infrastructure. The second one is regional balance. That means that there should be balance between the developed and underdeveloped regions, because if some area will be more developed and the other backward regions will be underdeveloped, so that is not a good sign of a developed country. So many plans have been formed to bring forth the backward regions. The government responsible for developing, it is responsible for developing all the regions and states in a balanced way and removing disparities. There should be no disparities between regions and states. For this purpose, many 5-year plans and particular attentions have been brought to those backward regions. And third one is economies of scale. That means where large industries have to be set up. So this large industry needs huge capital outlay. So the public sector has had to take steps to take advantage of these economies of scale, like electric power plants, natural gas plant, petroleum industries. They require large capital. So the government must make some should bring some interest in this. So these units require larger base to function, which was only possible with government resources. So the government have to take control over these so that they can get more resources for their large scale production. So these have changed. Next is check over concentration of economic power. That is, the public sector act as a check over the private sector. In the private sector, there are few industrial houses which would be willing to invest in heavy industries. That is, in heavy industries, because they need large capital outlay. Some private enterprises which will be having more capital, which is a huge company, they invest in these industries. So what will happen means, only there are few industries who will be more wealthy. So the wealth get concentrated in the few hands. So there is a chance of monopolistic practices. Because if some are only holding, then there will be problems, like if they will act as a leader, so everybody has to follow the rules of what is being said by them, because they have no other choice, because that is the only company existing. So such practices have to be checked. For this purpose, the public sector checks the private sector. Next is import substitution. During the second and the third 5-year plan, India was aiming to be self-reliant in many spheres. Obtaining foreign exchange was a problem, and it was difficult to import heavy machinery required for a strong industrial base. At the time, public sector companies involving heavy engineering, which would help in import substitution, were established. So importing heavy machinery for large scale operation was difficult. So what they did was, these public sector companies, they involved in heavy engineering, which would help in import substitution, were established. So they engaged in doing these in heavy engineering activities. Now, government policy towards the public sector since 1991. Since 1991, some government policies have been emerged for transforming the public sector. That was restructure and revive potentially viable PSUs, then close down PSU. PSU means public sector undertakings which cannot be revived, bringing down government equity in all non-strategic PSUs, and fully protect the interest of workers. So the first one is reduction in the number of industries reserved for the public sector. That is, if they were, for example, if there were 50 industries which were reserved for the public sector, then what they did was they gave half, maybe 25 they have reserved for some other sector. So what will happen is there is a reduction in the number of industries. If the 50 industries were controlled by the public, if they have reduced their control of 25 industries, that is called a reduction in the number of industries by the public sector. Next one is this investment of shares of a selected set of public sector enterprises. This means they are selling the public selling the shares of the company to the private sector and the public. That is because the objective was to raise resources and encourage wider participation of general public. For this purpose, they sell their equity to the private sector or the public sector. Next is policy regarding SIC units to be the same as that for the private sector. All public sector units were referred to the Board of Industrial and Financial Reconstruction to decide whether a SIC unit was to be reconstructed or closed down. SIC unit means a business organization. A SIC business organization means it is not able to carry on its activities normally because it is being at a loss for years. So they will decide whether to reconstruct it or whether it should be closed down. So policy regarding what should be done to the SIC units has been emerged. Next is Memorandum of Understanding. Improvement of performance through a Memorandum of Understanding system by which management has to be granted greater autonomy but held accountable for specified results. This means that the management have the authority to take decisions, have the autonomy, have freedom, but they are also accountable for their result, because any questions to them must be answered by these management. They have given freedom, but still it's not like they can do whatever they want, so they are answerable to their specified results. So this is what is meant by the changing role of public sector. Changing the role of public sector means how it is transformed, that is through the development of infrastructure. Then there was a regional balance. There means policies were brought to balance the regions. Then economies of scale. Then they're checking the concentration of economic power, that the public is checking the private sector. Then the import, they are looking after the import substitution, because they were not able to import heavy machinery, so how they can substitute the import, so they engaged in doing their own heavy engineering works. Then the government policy regarding how they can transform the public sector, like reduction in the number of industries, then selling their equity to public or private sector. Then policy regarding what should be done with the SIC units. And the last is Memorandum of Understanding. That is because it is brought that because they are giving freedom to the management and also they are accountable for the result. Now we are going to the global enterprises. Global enterprises is nothing but they are known as MNCs. You might have been knowing what is MNCs. They are multinational corporations. These type of organizations is known as global enterprises because they are operating all over the world. That is why they have called multinational corporations. Since the last 10 years, MNCs have been playing an important role in the Indian economy. So they have become a common feature of most developing economies in the world, because in a developed country, surely there exists multinational corporations. So they are a sign of a developed country. Now, what are the features of the global enterprises or the multinational corporation? The first one is huge capital resources. That is, these enterprises are characterized by possessing huge, you can imagine, right? Because MNC means multinational corporation because it's operating in the whole over the world, it's having its branches in most of the countries. So it is huge capital. It is having a huge capital. So only such organizations will be known as MNCs. By hearing the word itself, we can understand it will be having huge capital resources. They are possessing huge financial resources and the ability to raise funds from different sources. They are having huge amount of capital in their hands, because this type of companies, they are able to tap funds from various sources, because they are because multinational corporation has huge capital, so taking loan or borrowing funds is easy for them. Next is foreign collaboration, because foreign collaboration means we are having an attachment, or we are having a relation with a foreign company, so that is good for getting foreign exchange, or it helps in practicing new technology, because we can follow what methods they are using, and new brand names, then the use of, then the sale of technology, then how goods are produced in new methods. All these can be learned by a foreign collaboration. The third one is advanced technology, because these enterprises use new technologies, they can access, so they are of international standards and quality. They have quality, they are of international standards, and this leads to industrial progress. And this is product innovation, as these enterprises they are having high research, they are research oriented, then they have technology, so their product will also be innovative. Next is marketing strategies. These marketing strategy of global companies are far more effective than other companies, because they use aggressive marketing strategy in order to increase their sale. So they are up to date they have an up to date market information system. They know in detail how the market is moving, so they use they keep an eye on what all is happening in the market, and they frame their methods accordingly. That is, marketing strategies are more effective than other companies which is operating in a domestic country. Then is expansion of market territory, because their operations and activities extend beyond the physical boundaries of their own countries, because they are operating a multinational, so they will be having an expansion. If it may be operating, it have its branches not only in one country, it will be having almost 10, maybe it can be 5 countries, 10 countries, 20 countries, it will be having its branches, so it is expanding. Next is centralized control, and they have, wherever it operates, if it's having its branches in 20 countries, but a main one headquarter will be there in one country, that is where it is mainly operated, they will be having a central control in the headquarters. So these are the features of global enterprises. Now moving on to joint venture. What is meant by joint venture? That is, any business organization desires, it can join hands with another business organization for mutual benefit. That is, joint venture means two companies for a purpose of joining together. They are joining hands with one another, one business joining hand with the another for some mutual benefit. So it can be a private, or it can be a private owned, or a foreign company which are joining. Means joint venture, as the name suggests, joint means two companies are joining together. So in this chart you can see that the joint venture can be of two types. One is equity based, or it can be contractual. And if it is equity based, it can be a company, it can be a limited liability partnership, or it can be a partnership, where in case of a contractual, it can be a cooperation agreement or strategic alliance. We are going to look at the type of joint ventures. The first one is contractual joint venture. As the name suggests, it is for dealing in a contract. New jointly owned equity entity is not created. There is only an agreement to work together. So the parties do not share ownership of the business, but exercise some elements of control in the joint venture. A typical example of a contractual joint venture is a franchisee relationship. Such a relationship, the key elements are, see, in this joint venture, in the contractual joint venture, you can find the features that because two or more parties have a common intention, they will have a common intention, intention, so they will be joining hands, and each party brings some inputs, and both parties will exercise some control on the business, and the relationship is not a transaction to transaction, but has a character of little longer duration, because they are coming for satisfying a particular purpose, so they join hands, and both of them will bring input, and they carry on the business. It is relatively for a longer duration. This is what is known as a contract joint venture. Then when it's come to an equity joint venture is one in which a separate business entity jointly owned by two or more parties. In case of the first one, contractual, there is no separate business entity, but here it is a separate business entity jointly owned by 2 or more parties, and it is in accordance with the agreement of the parties. The type of business can be a company, partnership, firm, trust, limited liability partnership, venture capital funds. So this is an agreement either to create a new entity or for one of the parties join into ownership of an existing entity. It is like they both are joining to form a new company, or it can be one joining hand to get ownership of an existing company. It can be in both the ways. Then there will be shared ownership. Can be shared ownership, then shared management, because they are going to start a new company, or one company is joining to the other existing company. So it can be a shared ownership, shared management. They will be having shared responsibility, and they will be sharing profit and losses. This is known as equity based, because they are having a share in the venture. The first one was for doing some intention, both the companies having the same intention, they join hands and they bring some input, then they do some transactions and they leave it for relatively longer period, then they leave. But equity based is not like that. They form for forming a new venture. So examples of joint venture have been given: AVI Oil India, Green Grass Limited. So you can look at these examples. Then what are the benefits of this joint venture? First one is increased resources, because when both the companies come, resources will be more available. Then it is access to new market, as we said in the case of global enterprise, access to new market. Then it can be access to technology. They will be having access to new technology. Then they have innovative products. Then low cost of production. When two of them are joining, they can research on how they can reduce cost, so they can produce goods with low cost. Then they can have a brand name. When two businesses enter into a joint venture, then one of the parties benefit from the other's goodwill. If one is already having a past goodwill, then if it is joining hands with the other, then it will, that the new one will also be getting a goodwill, a benefit from that goodwill of the past one.